It's quiet in my house now. The kind of quiet that sinks into your bones and feels like peace, not loneliness. For a long time, I'd forgotten the difference. The loudest sound in the room is the gentle thump, thump, thump of my guide dog Buster's tail against the leg of my favorite armchair. He's dreaming, probably of chasing squirrels or that enormous steak I gave him last week. He earned it. He earned a lifetime of steaks. My name is Clyde. I'm 76 years old, and my dog is about to become the star witness in a case of attempted assault. The defendant? My own nephew. He thinks he's clever. My nephew Leo. He sees an old man, a little unsteady on his feet, who needs a dog to get around. He sees a grieving widower who rattles around in a house that's too big for him. A house that happens to be paid off and in a neighborhood where property values have gone through the roof. What he doesn't see, what he never thought to ask, is that I'm colorblind. To be specific, I have severe deuteranopia, red-green color blindness. To me, the little red pill for my heart condition and the little green pill of the powerful sedative he was using to replace it look almost identical. Two boring brownish-gray little pebbles. He counted on me being old. He never counted on me being unable to see the world the way he does, and he certainly never ever counted on Buster. Let me take you back a few months. It started subtly, a creeping fog that had nothing to do with the morning mist outside my window. I'd wake up feeling like I'd been drugged, which, as it turns out, I had. My head would feel like it was stuffed with cotton wool. I'd lose track of conversations halfway through. One afternoon, I was on the phone with my old army buddy Frank, and he said, "Clyde, are you drinking? You're slurring your words." I was insulted, of course. I've never been much of a drinker, but a seed of fear was planted. Was this it? Was this the long, slow slide into senility I'd always dreaded? Leo, of course, was the very picture of concern. He'd moved in with me 6 months prior, all full of sad stories about the tech startup that went bust and the landlord who was kicking him out. He was my sister's only boy, and on her deathbed, I'd made a promise, a foolish, sentimental promise. Look out for him, Clyde. He just needs a little guidance. So I did. I gave him the guest room, put food on the table, and asked for nothing in return. His concern was a masterpiece of performance art. He'd put a steadying hand on my arm as I stumbled. He'd say things like, "Whoa there, Uncle Clyde, let's get you to your chair. You seem a bit off today." His voice was always laced with that syrupy fake sympathy that made the hairs on my arm stand up. He was building a narrative, you see, the narrative of the doddering old uncle who was losing his grip. The first real alarm bell went off on a Tuesday. I have a routine. I'm a retired civil engineer. My life has been built on routines, on the precise and predictable nature of things. Tuesday is pill refill day. I have one of those plastic organizers, a little box for every day of the week. Leo had graciously offered to take over filling it for me. "It's too fiddly for you, Uncle," he'd said. "Let me help." That Tuesday, I took my morning medication with my oatmeal, same as always. But this time was different. I remember taking the pill, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up in my armchair. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the living room. My coffee cup was on the floor, a cold, dark stain spreading across the oak floorboards. My wife, Eleanor, and I had chosen 50 years ago. I'd lost an entire day. A whole 10-hour chunk of my life was just gone. Blank. That's when the terror really set in. It wasn't just fogginess anymore. This was a blackout. I sat there in the twilight, my heart hammering against my ribs, and I felt a presence beside me. It was Buster. He hadn't left my side. He rested his big golden head on my knee and let out a low, mournful whine. He was looking at the spilled coffee, then back at me, his intelligent brown eyes full of a worry that was so human it broke my heart. He knew something was wrong. And in that moment, looking into his eyes, I knew it too. This wasn't age. This wasn't dementia. This was something else. This was something else. This was something being done to me. It wasn't about revenge then. Not yet. It was about survival. It was about a cold, hard resolve that settled deep in my gut. My nephew thought I was a feeble old man. He was about to find out that a cornered badger is one of the most dangerous animals on the planet, and I had the best friend a man could ask for, sleeping right at my feet. The game was on. Leo just didn't know I was playing. The days that followed were a tightrope walk over a canyon of fear. I had to understand what was happening, but I couldn't let Leo know. I suspected a thing. The fogginess, the unnatural fatigue, it became my cloak. I leaned into it. When he'd ask me a question, I'd pause for a long time before answering. I'd forget where I put my reading glasses, forcing him to find them for me. I played the part of the man he wanted me to be, a fading photograph, a man whose signature would soon be worthless, unless it was co-signed by a concerned, responsible guardian. It was the most difficult role of my life, and it made my stomach turn. Every time he'd pat my shoulder and say, "Don't worry, Uncle, I'll take care of it," a wave of cold fury would wash over me. He wasn't taking care of me, he was taking over. My mind kept flashing back to Eleanor. We'd bought this house when it was just a frame on a plot of dirt. We'd planted the oak tree in the front yard when it was a sapling no thicker than my thumb. Now, its branches shaded the entire lawn. Every scuff on the floor, every chip in the paint was a memory. Eleanor in the kitchen, humming as she baked her famous apple pie, the scent filling every room. The two of us on the porch swing, watching the summer thunderstorms roll in. This house wasn't just wood and nails. It was the repository of my entire life. It was the last tangible piece of her I had left, and Leo was trying to erase me from it. And then there was my sister Martha, Leo's mother. I remembered my last visit with her in the hospice. Her hands were thin and frail, but her grip on my arm was surprisingly strong. She made me promise, "Clyde, please watch over Leo. He's not a bad boy, he gets lost. He follows the easy path." I promised her I would, and for that promise I had let this fox into my henhouse. The guilt was a heavy weight. Was I enabling him? Frank, my old army buddy, certainly thought so. I'd call him in the brief moments of clarity I had, usually early in the morning before I took the day's medication. Frank was as subtle as a sledgehammer. "Clyde, you old fool." He'd bark down the phone line from his retirement condo in Arizona. "You made a promise to a dying woman. That doesn't mean you have to hand over your entire life to her deadbeat son. What's he even doing all day? Job hunting? Or is he just measuring the drapes?" His words were harsh, but they were a lifeline. They reminded me that I wasn't crazy. Someone else saw the situation for what it was. The real breakthrough, the moment the fog finally parted and the cold, hard truth snapped into focus, came because of Buster. It was a Wednesday morning. Leo had already set out my pill for the day, a single brownish-gray speck sitting in the little plastic cup next to my orange juice. As I reached for it, Buster, who was lying by my chair, suddenly stood up. He nudged my hand with his wet nose, a firm, deliberate push. I swatted him away gently. "Down, boy." He whined, a high-pitched sound of distress, and nudged my hand again, harder this time. He was blocking me. It was so out of character for him. He was the best trained animal I had ever known, a marvel of discipline and intelligence. I paused, the pill between my thumb and forefinger. Why was he doing this? His training was rigorous. I remembered Sarah, his trainer from the Guide Dog Foundation, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and a deep love for her animals. She'd spent weeks with us, teaching me his commands, his signals. Buster's job was to keep me safe, to guide me past obstacles, to stop me at curbs. His nudges were always purposeful, but in my confusion, I ignored him. I was tired. I was scared of the fogginess, and the doctor, a new Dr. Leo had found for me, had said the medication was essential for my heart. So I took the pill. I swallowed it with a gulp of juice, and I gave Buster a stern look. "That's enough." It was a catastrophic mistake. That was the day of the spilled coffee, the lost day. When I finally came to my senses in the darkening living room, the dog's desperate warning replayed in my mind. He wasn't just being a dog. He was trying to tell me something. He was trying to save me. My mind, suddenly sharp with adrenaline, raced back to his training. Sarah had told me about a new experimental program they were testing. Some of the dogs, the ones with exceptionally keen senses of smell, were being trained for medical alerts. They could detect the chemical changes that preceded a diabetic shock or an epileptic seizure. Could he smell the difference in the pills? It seemed impossible. Fantastical. But what was the alternative? That I was losing my mind, just as Leo wanted everyone to believe. Trust the dog, Clyde, Sarah had always said. Your eyes might fool you, but his nose never will. The next morning, I was a man with a mission. The resolve I felt was like a steel rod running down my spine. The fear was still there, but now it was a tool, not a cage. I waited until Leo left the house, telling me he had a promising job interview. I doubted it. He was probably meeting with a lawyer to see how quickly he could have me committed. I went to my bathroom. Tucked away at the back of the medicine cabinet was an old prescription bottle, a refill of my actual heart medication from before Leo moved in. I'd kept it for emergencies. I opened it and shook one of the small red pills into my hand. Then I went to the kitchen and took the pill Leo had left for me. The little green one. In my colorblind world, they were nearly indistinguishable. Just two tiny dull-colored discs. I placed them about a foot apart on the clean white kitchen table. Then I called Buster. He trotted over, his tail giving a tentative wag. I pointed to the table. "Okay, boy," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "This is it." I slowly reached my hand toward the pill Leo had given me. The sedative. Buster instantly moved forward. He didn't bark, he just pushed his head firmly against my hand, turning it away from the pill. He looked up at me, his gaze intense. I pulled my hand back. My heart was pounding. I took a deep breath. Then I reached for the other pill, the one from my old prescription. As my fingers got close, Buster's entire demeanor changed. His body relaxed. He let out a soft woof and licked my hand. He then nudged my hand gently toward the pill. I sank into a kitchen chair, my legs suddenly weak. It was true. It was all true. The dog knew. He could tell the difference. My nephew was trying to poison me, to steal my mind, my home, my life, and my beautiful, brilliant dog was the only one who knew my secret. I sat there for a long time, one hand on Buster's head, the other clutching the small life-saving pill. The charade was over. My performance was about to begin. It wasn't about survival anymore. It was about justice, and I suddenly felt a grim, unfamiliar smile spread across my face. It was a smile that would have terrified Leo had he been there to see it. The first step was to build my case, and to do that, I needed allies. My first call was to Frank. I didn't beat around the bush. I laid it all out for him. The sedatives, the lost days, the dog. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a moment I worried he would think I'd finally gone off the deep end. Then I heard him exhale, a long, slow hiss. "The little rat," Frank said, his voice a low growl. "The slimy, little, conniving rat. I knew it, Clyde. I knew he was up to no good. What's your plan? We're not going to let him get away with this." The will was all I needed to hear. Frank had been my brother in arms in Korea, and he was my brother in this too. He didn't question me. He didn't doubt me. He believed me. The relief was so immense it almost brought me to my knees. My second call was more difficult. I had to find the number for Sarah, Buster's trainer at the Guide Dog Foundation. I explained the situation to her, my voice low and urgent. She was quiet for a long time, and her silence was different from Frank's. It was the silence of a professional processing a shocking and unprecedented piece of information. "Clyde," she said finally, her voice tight with concern, "this is highly irregular, but not impossible. Buster was part of our advanced scent training pilot program. The binders and coatings used in different medications have distinct chemical signatures. They're odorless to us, but to a dog like Buster, it could be like the difference between smelling a rose and a lily. He was trained to recognize the specific scent profile of your prescribed heart medication. Anything else, he would perceive as an anomaly, a danger. He's doing exactly what he was trained to do, keep you safe from harm. Her validation was like a switch flipping in my brain. This wasn't a wild guess or a desperate hope. It was science. It was training. It was fact. So what do? I asked. She became all business. You need to document everything, Clyde. Everything. You need to create a chain of custody for that evidence. Don't touch the pills with your bare hands. Use tweezers. Get some small sealable plastic bags, the kind jewelers use. Label each one with the date and time you found it. Keep a written log. Every time he swaps the pill, every time Buster alerts you, write it down. Date, time, what Leo said, how you felt. Details are your weapon. And Clyde, she added, her voice softening slightly, trust your dog. He's the best partner you could ask for. Her words gave me a blueprint. I was an engineer. I understood blueprints. I spent the next hour on the computer, ordering the evidence bags, a pair of fine-tipped tweezers, and a small, high-fidelity voice recorder. The war had begun, and I was building my arsenal. The next morning, the new routine started. Leo came into the kitchen, humming a little tune, and placed the small cup with the single pill next to my breakfast plate. "Good morning, Uncle. Slept well?" he asked, his smile as wide and empty as a politician's promise.
Like a log, Leo,
I said, making my voice sound thick and groggy. Like a log. I waited for him to go into the living room to watch his morning news show. Then the operation began. With Buster watching me intently, I reached for the cup. As expected, he got up and blocked my hand. "Good boy," I whispered, scratching him behind the ears. I then performed a little sleight of hand I'd practiced in the mirror for an hour the night before. I pretended to pop the pill into my mouth, taking a big gulp of water while actually palming it. Then I'd make my way to the bathroom, where, with the door locked, I'd use the tweezers to place the tiny green sedative into a baggie, label it with a fine-tipped marker, and hide it in a false-bottomed box I'd built inside the linen closet. Then I would take my actual heart medication from my secret stash. This became our sacred ritual. Every morning the swap. Every morning, Buster's faithful intervention. Every morning, another piece of evidence added to my growing collection. I was playing the long game. I let the fogginess continue, feigning confusion and memory lapses. In a way, it was easy. The rage I felt was so all-consuming that it made me feel detached, like I was watching a character in a play that I was writing, directing, and starring in. I also started using the voice recorder. I'd leave it on in my pocket or hidden under a cushion on the sofa. The things I captured were chilling. I caught him on the phone with, I assume, one of his friends. "Yeah, he's getting worse, man. The lights are on, but nobody's home. The doctor says it's just a matter of time. He thinks I'm his guardian angel. It's almost too easy." I also documented his helpfulness. He started bringing me documents to sign, legal forms, bank authorizations. He'd explain them in simple, condescending terms. "This is just so I can help you pay your bills, Uncle. You know, take some of the stress off you." I'd stare at the papers, pretending I couldn't focus on the words. I'd say, "Oh, I don't know, Leo. This all seems so complicated. I'll look at it later." His frustration was a tangible thing. It radiated off him in waves. And impatient people make mistakes. My calls with Sarah, the trainer, became a regular part of the plan. She was my subplot, my secret weapons handler. She was furious on my behalf, and deeply proud of her dog. She started researching legal precedents, cases where animal testimony, or rather, evidence provided by an animal's behavior, was used. She found a few, mostly in arson or search and rescue cases. She told me, "If it comes to it, Clyde, I will fly out there myself. I will testify as an expert witness on the reliability of Buster's training. The Foundation will back me up. We can provide his full training records, his success rates, everything. She was turning from a supportive voice on the phone into a key player on my team. Frank, meanwhile, had found me a lawyer. Not one of the old sharks he knew, but a young, hungry associate at a big firm downtown who specialized in elder law and financial abuse. Her name was Miss Davies. I arranged a meeting, telling Leo I had a long overdue dental appointment. I met Miss Davies in her glass-walled office overlooking the city. She was probably younger than my own son would have been. She had sharp eyes and listened to my entire story without interruption. I showed her my logbook. I played her one of the recordings. I told her about Buster. She didn't laugh. She didn't even look skeptical. She just leaned back in her chair, her expression grim. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice crisp and clear, "your nephew is not just being greedy, he is committing multiple felonies. Attempted assault, reckless endangerment, and what sounds like a concerted effort to defraud you of your assets through coercion. The evidence you've collected is devastating, especially the pills. A lab analysis will confirm what they are, and with your log and the dog's verifiable training, we can build an ironclad timeline." For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. This wasn't just in my head. This wasn't a family squabble. This was a crime. A serious crime. "What's our first move?" I asked, feeling more like the old Clyde, the engineer who built bridges, than I had in a long time. Miss Davies smiled, a thin, sharp smile. "The first move is silent. We don't confront him. We disarm him. You mentioned you gave him power of attorney. We're going to revoke it, immediately. We'll have a mobile notary meet you at a coffee shop tomorrow. We'll file the paperwork electronically. He won't know a thing until the bank sends him a letter informing him that his access to your accounts has been terminated. Let's see how he likes that." I walked out of her office feeling 10 feet tall. Leo thought he was hunting a sheep. He was about to find out he'd been stalking a lion, and the lion was done playing dead. The silent takeover began on a Thursday. As planned, I met a notary at a Starbucks 5 miles from my house, telling Leo I was meeting an old friend for coffee. The paperwork was signed, sealed, and electronically delivered before my cappuccino was even cool. Miss Davies had been right. It was a silent, surgical strike. I went home and resumed my role as the befuddled old uncle. For 2 days nothing changed. The morning ritual continued: the pill, the dog, the feigned swallow, the secret bagging and tagging. Leo was his usual solicitous self, the perfect picture of a caring relative. The calm before the storm. The storm broke on Saturday afternoon. The mail arrived, and I saw the letter from my bank, addressed to Leo. I made sure to be in the living room, dozing in my armchair, when he brought the mail in. I watched him through slitted eyelids as he sorted through the stack. He tossed a few catalogs on the coffee table, then paused. He was holding the letter from the bank. He ripped it open, his movements quick and agitated. His face was a study in slow dawning horror. He read the letter once, then twice. His jaw went slack. His face, usually pale, turned a blotchy, unhealthy red. He looked over at me, sleeping peacefully in my chair. He thought I was oblivious, knocked out by the sedative he believed I'd taken that morning. The look on his face was pure, venomous rage. It was the first time I had seen the real Leo, the monster behind the mask of concern. He stormed over to my chair and shook my shoulder, not gently. "Uncle Clyde, wake up." I blinked my eyes open, putting on my best confused, drowsy expression. "What is it, Leo? Is something wrong?" He waved the letter in my face. This is wrong. It's a letter from the bank. It says you revoked my power of attorney." "Why would you do that?" "We talked about this. You agreed it was for the best." I squinted at the letter, pretending to have trouble focusing. Oh, that, I said, waving a dismissive hand. I had a good day on Thursday. A moment of clarity. I think I called my lawyer, Miss Davies. A lovely young woman. She must have handled it for me. I'm so forgetful, you know. I probably forgot to tell you. Don't you worry about it, son. It's all taken care of. My calm, dismissive tone was like gasoline on a fire. He was sputtering, unable to form a coherent sentence. But, but the doctor. Your finances. You can't. I can't what, Leo? I asked, my voice still mild, but with an edge of steel that he in his panic completely missed. Manage my own affairs? I've been doing it for 76 years. I think I can handle it for a few more. Now if you'll excuse me, all this shouting has made me tired. I think I need a nap. I closed my eyes, leaving him standing there, sputtering in impotent fury. The balance of power had shifted. He had lost his primary weapon, my money. He knew it, and I knew it. But the scariest part was, I knew he wouldn't just give up. A cornered rat doesn't run. It bites. His panic would make him more dangerous, more desperate. I had to be ready for his next move. The voice recorder in my shirt pocket had captured the entire exchange. It was another golden piece of evidence for Miss D. That night, the atmosphere in the house was thick with unspoken tension. Leo barely spoke to me. He paced around the house like a caged animal, his cell phone glued to his ear, as he had a series of hushed, frantic conversations. I pretended not to notice, sitting in my chair with a book, with Buster's reassuring weight on my feet. Leo's desperation led him to make his boldest, and most foolish, move yet. 2 days later, he announced that he had a surprise for me. He'd been so worried about my recent decline that he'd arranged for a specialist to make a house call. A geriatric psychiatrist, he said, a top man in his field, just to do a simple evaluation and make sure we were on the right track with my care. I knew exactly what this was. This wasn't a doctor. This was a hired gun. This was his last-ditch effort to get a professional to declare me incompetent so he could contest the revoked POA and take control. I agreed, of course, with my usual placid smile. That sounds lovely, Leo. Very thoughtful of you. The specialist, a man named Dr. Finch, arrived the next afternoon. He had slick back hair, a cheap suit, and an air of smug authority. He oozed insincerity. Leo ushered him in, explaining in a loud, slow voice, "Dr. Finch, this is my Uncle Clyde. Be patient with him. He has good days and bad days." Dr. Finch gave me a condescending smile and sat opposite me. Leo hovered nearby, the concerned nephew. The doctor started with the classic questions. "Who is the president, Mr. Miller? What year is it? What did you have for breakfast?" I answered each question calmly, clearly, and correctly. I could see a flicker of annoyance in the doctor's eyes. This wasn't going according to his script. He started asking more subjective questions, clearly fed to him by Leo. "Your nephew tells me you've been having episodes of confusion, that you're misplacing things, that you have trouble following conversations. Is that true?" I leaned forward slightly. "Sometimes, doctor. Sometimes I feel quite foggy. It's been happening a lot more since my nephew so kindly started managing my medications for me." I looked over at Leo, whose face had gone rigid. Finch ignored my comment. He was already pulling out a prescription pad, ready to write his predetermined diagnosis. "Leo tells me you recently made some erratic financial decisions, revoking his power of attorney, for instance. That seems like a rash decision for someone in your condition." This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. This was the trap. I held up a hand. "Before you write that, doctor, perhaps you'd be interested in my own medical log. You see, I've been keeping careful track of my condition." I reached beside my chair and pulled out the simple spiral notebook where I'd documented everything, and next to it, the small digital voice recorder. Leo's eyes widened in panic. "I've found that my fogginess corresponds directly to the medication my nephew gives me each morning," I said, my voice level and strong. "I also have this." I pressed the play button on the recorder. Leo's voice filled the quiet room, crisp and clear from the recording I'd made the day he discovered the revoked POA. But the doctor, your finances, you can't. I pressed stop. Then I played another snippet, this one from a phone call he'd made when he thought I was asleep. Yeah, he's getting worse, man. The lights are on, but nobody's home. The doctor says it's just a matter of time. He thinks I'm his guardian angel. It's almost too easy. I turned the recorder off. The silence in the room was absolute. Dr. Finch's face had turned the color of putty. He stared from the recorder to Leo, his mouth hanging slightly open. Leo looked like he'd been poleaxed. He was white as a sheet, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape that wasn't there. Dr. Finch slowly stood up. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Leo. He just snapped his briefcase shut. I believe this consultation is over, he mumbled. He practically fled the house, leaving a faint trail of cheap cologne and desperation in his wake. Leo and I were alone. The community he had tried to recruit, his so-called specialist, had abandoned him at the first sign of trouble. He stared at me, his mask of concern finally shattered, revealing the weak, terrified man underneath. He knew he had lost. He just didn't know how badly yet. The final confrontation wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, no grand revelation in a stormy room. It happened the next morning, in the quiet light of dawn. I came downstairs to find Leo in the foyer, hastily stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. He was planning to run. He looked up when he saw me, his eyes wide with fear. Buster came and sat silently by my leg, a furry golden sentinel. I was just packing some things, Uncle Clyde. I thought maybe I've overstayed my welcome. He couldn't even look me in the eye. I walked past him and into the living room, placing a small clear plastic bag on the polished surface of the coffee table. Inside was a week's worth of little green pills. My voice when I spoke was quiet, devoid of the rage that had been simmering for months. It was cold. I know what you've been doing, Leo. He flinched as if I'd struck him. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I said, gesturing to the bag. I walked over to a bookshelf and pulled out a large shoebox. I put it on the table next to the small bag and took off the lid. It was full. Dozens and dozens of little baggies, each one meticulously labeled with a date. Every single pill you swapped. Every dose of sedative you tried to pump into me to make me seem like an incompetent old fool. I saved them all. His face crumbled. The pathetic denial gave way to a torrent of desperate excuses. Uncle Clyde, I was in trouble. I lost my job. I had debts. I didn't know what to do. I never meant to hurt you. I swear. You never meant to hurt me. I repeated, my voice dangerously soft. You tried to steal my mind, Leo. You tried to drug me into a stupor so you could steal my home. You sat here, day after day, watching me stumble and slur my words, and you pretended to care. You did that so you could sell this house, the house I built with my wife, and walk away with the money. That's a little more than being in trouble, son. That's evil. Tears were streaming down his face now, the cheap, easy tears of a man who'd been caught. Please, Uncle, don't do this. I'm your family. I'm your sister's son. My sister would be ashamed of you, I said, the words hitting him like stones. She asked me to look out for you, not to let you destroy me. You mistook my patience for weakness. Although you mistook my grief for senility. And you made one other critical mistake. Although he looked up, confused. You forgot about the dog, I said. As if on cue, there was a firm knock at the front door. Leo's head whipped around. I hadn't moved. That will be for you, I said. I opened the door to find two uniformed police officers and my lawyer, Miss Davies, standing on the porch. She gave me a small, reassuring nod. That's him, I said simply, pointing a finger at my nephew, who now looked like he was about to collapse. Leo was arrested. He didn't resist. He just sobbed, pathetic and broken. As they read him his rights and put him in the back of the patrol car. As they drove away, I stood on my porch, Buster at my side. A weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had lifted. The air smelled cleaner. The sun felt warmer. The quiet that settled over my house was no longer the quiet of fear and isolation. It was the quiet of peace, of victory. In the end, Leo took a plea deal. Faced with the mountain of evidence, the pills, the lab reports confirming they were powerful prescription sedatives, the recordings, my detailed logbook, and the sworn testimony of Sarah from the Guide Dog Foundation about Buster's capabilities, his lawyer told him he didn't have a prayer in court. He was convicted of attempted assault and financial elder abuse. He's serving a few years in a low-security prison. I have a permanent restraining order against him. I doubt I'll ever see him again. And honestly, my life is better for it. The house is mine again. Not just legally, but emotionally. It's no longer a crime scene. It's my home. Frank called me a hero. Miss Davies called me a model client. Sarah called Buster a superstar, and the story of his incredible perception helped her foundation secure a major grant to expand their medical alert training program. Buster, for his part, seemed unimpressed by the fame. He was happy with the extra ear scratches and the very large, very juicy steak I bought him. You know, people see an old man, and they see an easy target. They think that because your steps are a little slower, your mind must be too. They see vulnerability and mistake it for weakness. They look, but they don't see. My nephew looked at me and saw a meal ticket. He never saw the engineer who could meticulously plan and execute a counter-operation. He never saw the man who had a network of loyal friends. And he never ever understood the bond between a man and his dog. He thought my biggest weakness was my age, my supposed frailty. But my real weakness, the one he never knew about, my colorblindness, became my greatest strength. It was the piece of the puzzle he couldn't see, the variable he never factored into his cruel equation. So if you're listening to my story, I want you to take this away. Look after each other. Don't ever underestimate the quiet ones. And trust your instincts, whether they come from your own gut or from the wet nose of a loyal friend. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But what they never mention is that sometimes the old dog is the one teaching the most important lesson of all. And in my case, my dog was my protector, my confidant, and the best darn star witness a man could ever ask for. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt underestimated or know someone who has, please share this story with them. It might just give them the strength they need.
Oh,
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one. And please, share your own experiences in the comments below. It's in sharing our stories that we find our strength.